My daughter-in-law's cruel words tore through my heart like shards of glass. You've already gotten more than you ever deserved. No gift. No card. Nothing but cold silence and mocking glances in the very house I spent my entire life building for this family. Their ungratefulness burns deeper than any wound. The Boise snow kept falling, each flake a reminder of the coldness inside my son's home, where I stood empty-handed, invisible. I'm Eleanor Brooks, 65, a retired schoolteacher who thought family was my legacy. For years, I poured everything into James and Claire's life. I sold Tom's hardware store our life's work, worth $500,000 to bankroll James's real estate dreams. That money built their 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. With its cedar porch and granite countertops, I spent countless nights on their lumpy pull-out couch, 12 miles from my apartment, babysitting Sophie so they could chase promotions without daycare costs. "You're a lifesaver, Mom," James would say, his smile quick but fleeting. I believed it meant love. Every Thanksgiving, I'd drive through Boise's icy roads with a turkey I roasted myself, catering to Claire's gluten-free demands. "No wheat, Eleanor," she'd snap, inspecting my dishes like I was her hired cook. I swallowed the sting, thinking it kept us close. I paid for their Florida vacations, $3,000 each summer, so Sophie could see the ocean. But tonight, in their glowing living room, the Christmas tree sparkled with ornaments I'd gifted, yet no stocking bore my name, not even next to their cat, Muffins. James wouldn't meet my eyes. Claire's smirk, sharp as a blade, cut deeper than her words. "You already have more than you deserve," she'd said, her wine glass glinting. I'd given them my heart, my savings, my years, yet I was nothing but a guest they tolerated. As I gripped my untouched pie, the weight of their disregard crushed me. I wasn't just overlooked. I was erased. The Boise snow swirled around me as I stepped out of James and Claire's house, my homemade pie heavy in my hands, its warmth fading against the December chill. I'm Eleanor Brooks. And that Christmas night, the sting of Claire's words, "You already have more than you deserve," clung to me like frost on my scarf. The 12-mile drive back to my apartment felt endless, the headlights catching snowflakes that danced like mocking ghosts. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence was louder than any carol, screaming the truth I'd ignored for years. I was invisible in their world. Inside their glowing Maple Street home, the Christmas tree sparkled with ornaments I'd bought at Boise's winter market a decade ago, each one a memory of love I thought we shared. But the stockings, James's, Claire's, Sophie's, even Muffins, hung proudly above the fireplace, while mine was nowhere to be found. James, my son, wouldn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the hardwood floor I'd helped pay for. Claire's smirk, sharp as a paper cut, lingered as she sipped her wine, toasting my irrelevance. I'd given them everything, $500,000 from Tom's hardware store, years of babysitting Sophie, Thanksgiving spent catering to Claire's demands. Yet, I was less than a guest, a shadow they stepped over. As I drove, memories flooded back, each one a fresh wound. 3 years ago, I spent $1,200 on Sophie's 8th grade graduation party, stringing fairy lights across their backyard, while Claire complained the cake wasn't organic. "You could have checked, Eleanor," she'd said, her voice dripping with disdain. I smiled through it, thinking it was my job to keep the peace. Last July, I drove 20 miles to their house with a homemade lasagna when James said money was tight. They ate it, posted a photo of their steak dinner that night, and never mentioned my effort. "Thanks, Mom." James had mumbled once, years back, but his words felt like loose change tossed to a beggar. I pulled into my apartment complex, a squat brick building off State Street, and sat in my car, the pie now cold on the passenger seat. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, not from the cold but from the rage bubbling beneath my hurt. I'd been their bank, their babysitter, their cook, yet I was nothing. I thought of Sophie, my granddaughter, her brown curls bouncing as she opened gifts, oblivious to the tension. She deserved better than their coldness, but so did I. I stepped out, snow crunching under my boots, and trudged to my second-floor unit. The hallway smelled of pine cleaner, a stark contrast to the cinnamon warmth of their home. Inside, my apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every thought. I set the pie on the counter, its foil crinkled like my resolve. I sank into my armchair, staring at the framed photo on the side table, Tom and me at Sophie's first birthday, laughing as she smeared frosting on my cheek. I'd been the one behind every family moment, snapping photos, planning parties, writing checks. But tonight, I saw it clearly. They didn't want me, just what I gave. Claire's voice echoed again, smug and sharp. You already have more than you deserve. It wasn't just words, it was their truth. They saw me as a burden, a line item in their perfect life. I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a stack of old receipts, $2,000 for their roof repair in 2019, $800 for Sophie's dance lessons, $150 for Claire's birthday dinner at Chandler's Steakhouse. Each one a testament to my love. Now proof of my blindness. I wasn't family. I was a resource they'd drained dry. My chest tightened, not with sadness but with a fury I hadn't let myself feel before. I'd spent decades building their world, James's business, Claire's lifestyle, Sophie's memories, yet they hung a stocking for their cat before me. I looked out my window at the Boise skyline, the snow blurring the city lights like tears I refused to shed. Enough, I whispered, my voice low but steady. I wasn't just hurt, I was done pretending their neglect was my fault. I grabbed my phone, tempted to call James, to demand why he let Claire humiliate me, why he stayed silent. But I stopped. Calling would only give them more power, another chance to dismiss me. Instead, I opened my journal, its pages worn from years of unspoken thoughts. I wrote one line, I'm not their shadow anymore. The pen shook, but my heart didn't. Something was shifting, a spark of defiance igniting in the ashes of my pain. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I was ready to see the truth, and that truth was about to break me open. The Boise snow fell heavier now, blanketing my apartment's window as I sat alone, the weight of that Christmas night crushing my chest. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and the truth I'd written in my journal, I'm not their shadow anymore, felt like a hollow promise in the dim light of my reality. Claire's venomous words, you already have more than you deserve, echoed in my mind. But it was James's silence, his refusal to even glance at me, that carved the deepest wound. I'd given them everything, $500,000 from Tom's hardware store, years of babysitting Sophie, Thanksgivings spent bending to their whims, yet I was erased, not just from their Christmas, but from their lives. The pie I'd brought sat untouched on my counter, a mocking symbol of my unreturned love. I shuffled to my mailbox, 30 feet down the icy hallway, hoping for a distraction. Among the junk mail was a cream-colored envelope from James and Claire, postmarked 2 days before Christmas. My hands trembled as I tore it open, expecting an apology, a card, anything to soften the sting of that night. Instead, it was a typed letter, cold and formal, thanking me for my generosity in letting them use my savings for their home renovation, a $25,000 kitchen upgrade with marble counters and a wine fridge. We knew you'd understand, Mom, it read, signed with their names in perfect cursive. Understand? I sank to the floor, the letter crumpling in my fist. They hadn't asked. They'd assumed I'd hand over my security, my future, like I always had. My heart pounded as I stumbled to my desk, pulling out a locked box where I kept important papers. I hadn't checked it in years, trusting James when he said, "It's just paperwork, Mom, for emergencies." Inside, I found a document dated 18 months ago, a notarized transfer of my family home's deed, the one Tom and I built 40 years ago on Orchard Street, with its wraparound porch and creaky oak floors. My name was gone, replaced by James and Claire's. I gasped. The air sucked out of me. They'd stripped me of the house I'd paid off with decades of teaching, the house where Sophie took her first steps. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking, as if they could hear me across the 12 miles to their Maple Street mansion. I rifled through more papers, each one a fresh betrayal. A bank statement showed my retirement account, once $80,000, now drained to $12,000, with withdrawals labeled family expenses. Another document authorized Claire as a co-signer on my savings account. I'd signed these, yes, but under James's gentle pressure. It's just to make things easier, Mom. Easier for who? My vision blurred. Not from tears, but from a rage so deep it felt like drowning. I'd been their ATM, their doormat, their fool, and they'd planned it piece by piece, while I smiled and brought casseroles. I staggered to the living room, collapsing onto my worn couch. The photo of Tom and me at Sophie's first birthday stared back from the side table, his grin a reminder of a time when love didn't come with a price tag. I clutched it, my fingers tracing his face. I let them take it all, Tom, I said aloud, my voice raw. Our home, our savings, our legacy. The silence answered, heavy and accusing. I thought of Sophie, her innocent laughter at that party, unaware of her parents' scheming. I'd protected her, shielded her. But who was protecting me? Outside, the snow piled up, burying Boise in a white shroud. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. My reflection looked older, frailer, a woman who'd given until there was nothing left. Claire's smirk flashed in my mind, her wineglass raised like a trophy over my humiliation. James's averted eyes burned worse, his cowardice a betrayal deeper than words. I'd been their foundation, but they'd built their lives on my ruins. My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. No more, I said, my voice a low growl. The pain was unbearable, a knife twisting in my gut, but beneath it, something stirred a flicker of defiance, a spark that refused to die. I wasn't ready to rise yet, but I was done sinking. The Boise night pressed against my apartment window, the snow now a silent shroud over my shattered world. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and the truth I'd uncovered, James and Claire's betrayal, stripping me of my home and savings, had plunged me into a darkness I thought I'd never escape. The letter thanking me for my generosity, the deed transfer erasing my name from our Orchard Street house, the drained $80,000 from my retirement account. All of it lay scattered across my kitchen table, a paper trail of my stolen life. Claire's smug words from Christmas night. You already have more than you deserve, burned in my ears, matched only by James's spineless silence. I'd hit rock bottom, my heart raw, my hands trembling with the weight of their deceit. But in that suffocating quiet, something stirred a spark, faint but fierce, refusing to let me drown. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the bookshelf where I kept Tom's old journals, their leather covers worn from years of grief. I hadn't touched them since his death 5 years ago, afraid of the memories they held. But tonight, I needed his strength. I pulled out a navy blue journal, its pages yellowed, and flipped to a note he'd written after we lost our first home to a bad loan. Strength isn't shouting, Eleanor. It's choosing when to stand, even when the world wants you to kneel. His words hit me like a lightning bolt, cutting through the fog of my despair. I clutched the journal to my chest, my breath hitching. You were right, Tom, I whispered, my voice hoarse but alive. I've been kneeling too long, though wait. I sank into my armchair, the journal open in my lap, and stared at the Boise skyline, its lights blurred by the falling snow. The pain was still there, sharp as a knife, but beneath it, a fire kindled. I wasn't just a victim of their greed, I was a woman who'd built a life, a home, a family, only to watch it stolen. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling, not with fear but with purpose. I opened the photo app, filled with years of staged smiles, James and Claire at their beach house, Sophie's dance recitals I'd funded, Christmas dinners I'd cooked. Each image was a lie, a mask over their betrayal. No more, I said, my voice steady now. One by one, I deleted them, each swipe a small act of rebellion. The last photo, me holding Sophie at her first birthday, Tom laughing beside us, stayed. That was mine, not theirs. I stood and paced my small living room, the creak of the floorboards grounding me. The receipts and documents on the table glared up at me. $2,000 for their roof, $800 for Sophie's lessons, $25,000 for their kitchen. I'd been their bank, but they'd never seen me as family. Claire's voice echoed again, her wine glass raised like a taunt. James's averted eyes flashed, his silence louder than any insult. But Tom's words drowned them out. Choose when to stand. I stopped pacing, my breath steadying. I'm choosing now, I said to the empty room, my voice rising. I'm not your shadow, your servant, or your fool anymore. I walked to my desk, grabbed a pen, and opened my journal, the same one where I'd written, I'm not their shadow anymore. Just hours ago, I added a new line. My silence ends tonight. The words felt like a vow, etched in ink and resolve. I wasn't ready to fight them yet, but I was ready to fight for me. I thought of Sophie, her innocent curls bouncing as she opened gifts, unaware of her parents' schemes. She deserved a grandmother who stood tall, not one crushed by their greed. I thought of the house on Orchard Street, its oak floors holding memories of Tom's laughter, Sophie's first steps. They'd taken it, but they couldn't take my will to reclaim my worth. I set the journal down and looked at my phone again. A missed call from James blinked on the screen. No voicemail, just his name mocking me. Not this time, I said, tossing the phone onto the couch. I wouldn't call back, wouldn't beg for answers they'd never give. Instead, I walked to the window, the snow still falling, and felt a shift inside me, not a breaking, but a building. The pain was still there, raw and heavy, but it wasn't all I was. I was Eleanor Brooks, and I was done letting their betrayal define me. Tomorrow, I'd find a way to take back what was mine, not just my money, but my name, my strength, my life. The Boise dawn broke cold and gray, the snow outside my apartment window settling into a quiet that mirrored the resolve now burning in my chest. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and last night's awakening, fueled by Tom's words, strength is choosing when to stand, had lit a fire I couldn't ignore. The pain of James and Claire's betrayal, their theft of my home and savings, still throbbed like a fresh bruise. But my journal's vow, my silence ends tonight, was no longer just words. It was a battle cry. I'd been their bank, their babysitter, their fool $500,000 from Tom's store, $25,000 for their kitchen, my Orchard Street home stolen, but I was done kneeling. Today, I'd start taking back my life, piece by piece. I pulled on my wool coat, the one Tom always said made me look like I owned the room, and drove 8 miles across Boise to the downtown office of Rebecca Klein, a lawyer recommended by my friend Dorothy Miller from the Knitting Club. The office was a small brick building off Idaho Street, its sign weathered but proud, like me. Rebecca, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, greeted me with a firm handshake and a no-nonsense nod. Dorothy says you need help untangling a mess, she said, gesturing to a chair. I set my locked box of documents on her desk: deed transfers, bank statements, the letter from James and Claire, and poured out the truth. The drained $80,000 retirement account, the house I no longer owned, the signatures I'd given under James's soft assurances. They said it was for emergencies, I told her, my voice steady but edged with fury. But they took everything. Rebecca's jaw tightened as she scanned the papers. This isn't just carelessness, Eleanor, she said, her voice low. This is calculated. They used your trust to siphon your assets. She pointed to the deed transfer. This was filed without proper consent. And your accounts? Claire's name is on them, but you were never informed of the full scope. I felt my stomach lurch, not with shock but with clarity. What can I do? I asked, leaning forward. Rebecca's eyes met mine, unflinching. We start by locking them out. New accounts, rerouted pension, legal notices to revoke their access. It's not quick, but it's yours to take back. I nodded, my hands no longer trembling. Let's do it, I said, my voice like steel. That afternoon, I drove 2 miles to First Interstate Bank on Fairview Avenue, the cold air biting my cheeks as I walked inside. The banker, a young woman named Lisa, listened as I explained my need for a new account, one with only my name. No secondary holders? She asked, her pen pausing. Not anymore, I replied, my gaze steady. By 3 p.m., I'd opened a checking account and rerouted my $1,200 monthly pension, the first money in years that was truly mine. Lisa handed me a debit card, its plastic cool in my palm. You're all set, Mrs. Brooks, she said with a smile. I felt my spine straighten, as if my bones remembered their purpose. Back at my apartment, I called Dorothy, her warm voice a lifeline in the storm. I saw a lawyer, Dot, I said, pacing my kitchen. They took my house, my savings, everything. But I'm fighting back. She paused, then said softly, You're not just fighting, Eleanor. You're rising. Her words hit me like a warm breeze, melting a layer of the ice inside me. You're not alone, she added. Come to Knitting Club tomorrow. We'll have tea, and you'll see you've got people in your corner. I smiled, the first real one in weeks. I'll be there, I promised. I sat at my kitchen table, the documents now organized in a neat folder labeled Eleanor's Reclamation. I added new evidence, a receipt for $1,500 I'd paid for James's car repair last year, a note from Claire requesting $200 for Sophie's school trip, never repaid. Each paper was a brick in the wall I was building around my life. I thought of Sophie, her laughter still pure, untouched by her parents' greed. I'd fight for her too, to show her what strength looked like. James's missed call still blinked on my phone, but I ignored it. His silence on Christmas night, his lies about emergencies, had lost their power over me. As the Boise sunset painted the sky orange, I stood at my window, the snow now a distant shimmer. Claire's smirk, James's averted eyes, they didn't own me anymore. I was Eleanor Brooks, and I was taking back my name, my future, my worth. Tomorrow, I'd return to Rebecca's office with more documents, ready to challenge the deed transfer. The fight was just beginning, but for the first time, I felt alive, not buried. I wasn't just reclaiming my money, I was reclaiming me, and no one could stop that. The Boise morning was crisp, the January air sharp as I shelved books at the Boise Public Library, my volunteer shift a quiet refuge after weeks of reclaiming my life. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and the fire ignited by Tom's words, "Strength is choosing when to stand," had fueled my every move since that shattering Christmas night. Claire's cruel taunt, "You already have more than you deserve," and James's silent betrayal had pushed me to rock bottom, where I discovered their theft $80,000 from my retirement, my Orchard Street home's deed transferred without consent. But I'd fought back, opening a new bank account, rerouting my $1,200 monthly pension, and working with Rebecca Klein to challenge their legal overreach. My journal's vow, "My silence ends tonight," was now a reality, each step a brick in the wall of my reclaimed worth. Yet, as I slid a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird onto the shelf, the library's glass door swung open with a clang, and I felt it a familiar weight, like the air before a storm. James stood there, my son, 42, his real estate agent suit rumpled, his face flushed with something between anger and desperation. His eyes, once so like Tom's, now held a hardness I barely recognized. He strode toward me, ignoring the patrons glancing up from their tables. "Mom, we need to talk," he barked, his voice loud enough to echo off the high ceilings. I set the book down, my hands steady, and faced him. "Then talk, James," I said, my voice calm but unyielding, a far cry from the woman who'd once begged for his approval. He stepped closer, his breath heavy. "You're making us look like monsters," he snapped, waving a folded letter my notice to revoke their financial access, sent by Rebecca last week. "Claire's a wreck, Mom. You're tearing our family apart over what? A misunderstanding?" I almost laughed, the sound bitter in my throat. A misunderstanding? The $25,000 kitchen they borrowed from my savings, the house they'd stolen, the years I'd spent on their couch while they posted steak dinners online. I crossed my arms, my gaze locking onto his. "You didn't misunderstand when you took my home, James," I said, my voice low and sharp. "Or when you drained my retirement. You and Claire planned this, and you thought I'd stay quiet." His face reddened, his hands clenching. "We were helping you," he shot back, his voice rising. "You're old, Mom. You needed us to manage things. You should be grateful." The word hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. The library grew quieter, patrons' eyes darting toward us, but I didn't care. "Grateful?" I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "For what? For selling my life to fund yours? For letting Claire mock me in my own family's home while you looked away?" I stepped forward, my heart pounding but my words steady. "I gave you $500,000 from your father's store, James. I gave you my time, my love, my home. And you gave me nothing, not even a stocking on Christmas." James's mouth opened, then closed, his eyes flickering with something guilt, maybe, but too weak to matter. "You're being dramatic," he muttered, his voice lower now, as if he sensed the room's judgment. "We're family, Mom. You don't do this to family." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't make you feel like a stranger in your own life. I built your world, James. But I won't let you destroy mine." The words hung between us, heavy and final. For the first time I saw him falter, his shoulders slumping, his eyes avoiding mine. A young librarian, Emily, approached, her voice gentle but firm. "Sir, you're disturbing the patrons. Please lower your voice or leave." James glanced around, suddenly aware of the eyes on him old Mr. Thompson at the newspaper rack, the college kids at the study tables. He pointed at me, his finger shaking. "This isn't over, Mom," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. I stood there, my heart racing but my spine straight, feeling taller than I had in years. The patrons' gazes softened, some nodding slightly, as if they understood more than I'd said. I returned to my cart, shelving the next book with deliberate care. James's words echoed, "You're tearing our family apart." But they couldn't touch me anymore. I'd spent decades carrying their weight, but now I carried my own strength. Emily slipped me a note as I left the desk. "You're braver than most, Mrs. Brooks." I folded it into my pocket, a small anchor in the storm. As I stepped outside into the Boise chill, the snow crunching under my boots, I knew this wasn't the end. Claire's venom, James's desperation, they'd fight back, maybe harder now. But I was ready. I'd face their next move, not as their shadow, but as Eleanor Brooks, a woman who'd chosen to stand. The Boise winter sun hung low, casting long shadows across my apartment as I sipped coffee, the warmth of the mug steadying my hands after weeks of reclaiming my life. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and the fire sparked by Tom's words, "Strength is choosing when to stand," had carried me through the darkest betrayal, Christmas night's sting, Claire's cruel, "You already have more than you deserve," James's silent complicity, the theft of my Orchard Street home, and $80,000 from my retirement they'd tried to bury me. But I'd risen, opening a new bank account, rerouting my $1,200 pension, and facing James in the library, where I told him, "I built your world, but I won't let you destroy mine." His retreat, shaken by my resolve, was a victory, but I knew Claire wouldn't let it rest. As I set my mug down, my phone buzzed a text from Dorothy Miller, my knitting club friend. "Check Claire's Facebook. You need to see this." I opened the app, my heart bracing for impact. There it was, Claire's post, typed in that faux humble lowercase. Some people think family owes them everything. Caring for elders is a sacrifice no one appreciates. We've given so much, only to be painted as the villains. Below, a photo of her and James, smiling in their Maple Street kitchen, my $25,000 marble counters gleaming behind them. The comments were a gut punch. You're so strong, Claire. Some people are just ungrateful. My name wasn't mentioned, but the shadow was clear. They'd turned my pain into their performance, framing me as the burden who dared to stand up. My hands shook, not with fear but with a rage that burned hotter than ever. They thought they could silence me with likes and emojis. I paced my living room, the creak of the floorboards matching my racing pulse. Claire's post wasn't just a jab. It was a calculated move to rewrite the narrative before I could speak. But I wasn't the Eleanor who'd once swallowed her hurt to keep the peace. I grabbed my phone and called KTVB, Boise's local news station, where a young journalist, Sarah Evans, ran a segment called Silver Strength, Seniors Rising Above. I'd seen her stories about women reclaiming their lives after loss. I have a story, I told her, my voice steady. It's about family, betrayal, and finding your voice. Sarah's tone was warm but urgent. Can you come to the studio tomorrow? We'll keep it anonymous if you want. I paused, then said, Number use my name. Eleanor Brooks. I'm done hiding. The next day, I drove 5 miles to the KTVB studio off Warm Springs Avenue, my wool coat buttoned tight against the January chill. Sarah greeted me with a kind smile, her notepad ready. The studio was small, just a black backdrop and a single camera, but it felt like a stage for my truth. Tell me everything, she said. I did Christmas night, the missing stocking, the stolen home, the drained accounts, James's library outburst. My voice cracked when I spoke of Tom's journal, his words about standing tall. They took my money, my home, but they can't take my worth, I said, my eyes locked on the camera. I'm speaking for every senior who's been made to feel like a burden. Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. This will resonate, Eleanor. You're not alone. The segment aired 2 days later, a 5-minute clip titled, Eleanor's Stand, A Senior's Fight for Dignity. I watched it at Dorothy's house. Her knitting needles paused as my face filled the screen. Quiet doesn't mean weak, I said on air. It means I chose when to fight. By evening, my inbox overflowed with messages from strangers across Boise seniors who'd felt invisible. Daughters who'd seen their mothers dismissed. One letter, handwritten on floral stationery, read, You gave me courage to set boundaries with my kids. Thank you, Eleanor. Another, from a man in Meridian, said, My sister took my savings too. Your story's mine. I clutched the letters, tears finally falling not from pain but from connection. As I walked home, 2 miles through Boise's snowy streets, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from James. Mom, why'd you go public? You're embarrassing us. I deleted it without replying. Claire's post had tried to paint me as the villain, but my truth was louder. The community's support, from Dorothy's warm hug to strangers' letters, was a shield I hadn't known I needed. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for everyone who'd been silenced. And as I stepped into my apartment, the Boise skyline glowing beyond my window, I knew the fight wasn't over. Claire and James would push back, maybe with more lies, but I was ready to face them, not alone, but with a community behind me. The Boise winter softened, the snow outside my apartment window melting into patches as January gave way to a tentative spring. I'm Eleanor Brooks, and the fire that sparked on that brutal Christmas night ignited by Claire's venomous, "You already have more than you deserve," and James's cowardice had carried me through betrayal, despair, and defiance. They'd stolen my Orchard Street home, drained $80,000 from my retirement, and erased me from their lives. But I'd fought back. With Rebecca Klein's help, I'd secured my $1,200 pension, reclaimed my financial independence, and faced James in the library, telling him, I won't let you destroy mine. My KTVB interview had turned my pain into a beacon, drawing letters from Boise seniors who'd felt the same invisibility. Now, as I sat at my kitchen table, a new chapter was beginning, not with anger, but with peace. I drove 3 miles to a notary office on State Street, a small space smelling of coffee and ink, to finalize my will. Rebecca had prepared the documents, her sharp eyes softening as she slid them across the desk. "This ensures your wishes are clear, Eleanor," she said. I nodded, my pen steady, as I left my modest savings and Tom's antique watch to Sophie for her college fund, and the rest to the Boise Senior Center, where I'd once taught knitting classes. James and Claire's names were nowhere in it, they'd taken enough. "You're sure?" Rebecca asked, her voice gentle. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "They loved my money, not me. That's not love." The notary's stamp echoed like a door closing, final and freeing. Back home, I found Sophie at my doorstep, her brown curls tied back, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. "Grandma," she said, clutching a duffel bag. "I saw your interview. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I stepped aside, letting her in. "Over tea at my kitchen table," she spoke quietly. "Mom and Dad said you were selfish, but I know the truth now. I want to be here, with you." My heart swelled, not with triumph but with love, the kind I'd thought was lost. "You're always welcome, Sophie," I said, squeezing her hand. "This is your home too." We sat in silence, the kind that held us together, not apart. I opened my journal, its pages now filled with my journey. I wrote, "I didn't just reclaim my name, I reclaimed my worth. And I'm passing that to Sophie." The Boise skyline glowed beyond my window, its light steady, like my resolve. I'd spent years giving until I was empty. But now I knew. My value wasn't in what I gave others, but in what I kept for myself. The lesson was hard-won but clear-set boundaries. Speak your truth, and never let silence become your cage. I wasn't just Eleanor Brooks, the retired teacher or discarded mother. I was a woman who'd chosen to stand, and I'd stand for every senior who felt unseen. If my story touched you, please share it on the Unwanted Revenge. Like this video, leave a comment with your own story, and subscribe to join us in lifting up voices too long ignored. Your support keeps these truths alive, and together, we can remind each other. We're never too old to claim our worth.